Last night on MasterChef Australia.
If I stuff up in any way, I'm going home, and it's a little bit scary.
Julie and Justine went head-to-head in a pressure test.
Justine, it's time for you to leave the MasterChef competition.
Tonight, we're back home in the MasterChef kitchen for another masterclass.
Gary's going to show us something special, so I'll leave you to it.
Find out the secrets behind Gary's special fried rice.
You've just got to jam flavour into it.
Some tips for a quick and easy pizza, pork belly and scallops, and finish off with lemon and date scones.
Reminds me of when I used to go over to my grandma's house and eat scones with her. It's beautiful.
We're back from Hong Kong, and it's nice to have a day of masterclass where we can just sit back and learn some stuff.
Walking into the MasterChef kitchen, we see 2 extra chairs. Be interesting to see who else shows up today.
So what a massive week in Hong Kong. Amazing week in Hong Kong. Learned so much. George and I ate so much, which is great. And it's all part of the experience. But we had a few surprises, didn't we? Justine faltered on the stir-fry of noodles. She was eliminated.
For one of you, the dream is about to end. But Julie, it's not you. You're still in the competition.
How do we all feel about that?
We'll certainly miss her here. She was doing really well. She'd won like the previous 3 weeks. Invention tests on the trot, so a bit disappointing for her to go into her first pressure test and not come back from it.
And with 4 of you left standing here, and the 2 that are out there cooking, Lucas and Julia, this competition is going up and up, and it's going to get harder and harder. And if you think that you're going to get through without watching every little thing you do, then think again.
Right, we've got a surprise for you today, and you're probably wondering, there's 2 spare seats on either side of you. Well, we've actually brought 2 very special guests, friends of MasterChef Australia. Here they are.
George and Gary announced that they have a small surprise for us, and in walked Julia and Lucas.
Welcome back.
Julia and Lucas are huge threats to win this competition.
Now I'm back in masterclass, and now more than ever I can see that these are the guys to beat.
The benefits of being here for masterclass is that we're actually learning what the other guys are learning. It's probably gives us a bit of an edge, actually.
Julia, Lucas, welcome. Welcome to Masterclass. Now remember, their place is guaranteed in the final week of MasterChef. Yours isn't yet. So first up, we're going to look back at the mystery box challenge that you had in Hong Kong. Each of you had a different protein in the steamer basket that was on the bench. So you had half an hour to produce a dish out of the steamers that were in front of you.
You're put under pressure, but you come up with some really beautiful dishes, all different, all with some amazing, beautiful flavours. But now I think Gary's going to show us something special, so I'll leave you to it.
Cheers. So, taking a look at that mystery box challenge, there were some interesting ingredients. Even you, Sam, you got tofu and you're like, what the hell am I going to do with that? But there are beautiful dishes that you can make from tofu. And you've really, especially at this stage of the competition, you've got to turn your minds around and you've got to get back to the fact that whatever you do, you've just got to jam flavour into it. So that's what we're going to do today. Gary's version of stir-fried rice. And in it, I'm going to put tempeh, which is a type of tofu. It's a pressed soybean cake. So because of that, Sammy, you're coming up to help me. And tempeh is used a lot in Indonesian cooking. And to be honest, on its own, much like bean curd, there's not a lot of flavour into it, but it's about how you apply it, how you use it. So first up, a cup of rice. So I want you to pop that on. We're going to cook that in an absorption method, all right? So 1.5 cups of water, and then we're going to put a pinch of salt and a little sprinkle of oil. And the reason we put that little dash of oil is it coats the grains as it's cooking, and then as it steams and absorbs all the water, keeps it separate. So it's up to the boil, quick as you can. Chris?
In stir-fry recipes, I read a lot that they say use day-old rice.
Yeah.
Does that make much difference?
You know what makes a difference because it's dry. Like if you put that rice in the fridge, it dries it out in the fridge. So you get that sort of little beady sound as you throw it onto the tray, and it actually is good. If you use rice straight from the pan and it's hot, you'll always end up with a claggy rice stir-fry. Second job, we're going to do a pickled ginger. So there's about 1/2 cup of sugar and about half of that of vinegar. So double sugar to vinegar if you turn it around the other way. Yeah. That's it, give it a swirl around, turn it on, bring it up to the boil. Pop the ginger in almost straight away because it will dissolve. So you pop the ginger in, and then the idea here is that ginger, it's got that, quite sort of astringent sort of flavour, it's quite harsh, and by pickling it like this, you'll just give it that nice sort of sweetness. So you get that ginger punch and then that sweetness behind it. That'll come up to the boil, simmer for about 5 minutes, take it off and just let it sit. All right, so the rice is boiling. So what I do is just give that a little bit of a swirl, just to make sure, you can just do it, just to make sure it's all separate. Pop the lid on, turn it onto a low gas. The rice is going to be in here for about 6 to 8 minutes, just absorbing that water. And then when the gas is turned off, I leave it for about 10 minutes. All right, so the water's gone, and all that steam is going to help continue the cooking. So just take it off. So it's been on about 8 minutes, and it comes off. All right? Gary's special fried rice. We're going to use this tempeh. So I just want you to just dice a little bit. All stir-fries are about the ingredients and about getting the ingredients right. And then, when you cook, layering the flavours, OK? So, first of all, we're going to do an egg, and we're going to cook that with a bit of ginger and garlic, all right? Just to get, number one, a texture in there, and then introduce the first layer of flavour. So we're going to get that wok nice and hot. Yep. A little bit of oil in the wok. We're going to put about a teaspoon of garlic and a teaspoon of ginger in there. Give it a second just to fry and release a bit of aroma. And then we're going to put in the egg, all right? Just let it sit for a sec. And then basically what you're going to do, once the egg's in, all right, is just give it a stir around and cook it. Don't be afraid, you can overcook it, essentially. It's just so it's nice and stiff, so you get these nice little eggy bits. Yep. That's great. Give it a flip over, and then that can come out. Can you smell that?
It's beautiful.
It smells beautiful, doesn't it? It's just ginger and garlic, that's all it is.
Straight out?
Yep, straight out onto a plate, and then wok back on. OK, so Sam, wipe that wok out, and then another bit of oil in.
Sure.
Start it off with a little bit of ginger and garlic, again, just to reinforce the flavour. Now, next up, we're going to stir-fry the lapchong.
Yep.
All right? This is a sweet pork sausage, all right? And you find these across Asia, whether they're China, Vietnam, Malaysia. This sweet sausage you can buy, like in Melbourne, for example. I always go to a district where I know, like Footscray or Victoria Street, where are little hubs of Vietnamese communities, and that's where I'll go. So we bleed the fat out of the sausage. That's what we're trying to achieve. In with the tempeh. Yeah, it smells good. Oh, yeah. All right, so we'll put a few greens in. All right, this is gai lung, so Chinese broccoli. And if you've got the little flowers that are on the top, then I would use that. And then we're going to put in about a handful of mustard greens, which are, again, a type of Asian leaf, or, commonly used dark green Asian leaf. Julie?
If you'd have used normal tofu instead of tempeh in that dish, would it have held together?
I think if you use silken tofu, you'd have to put it through right at the last minute. But to be honest, I'd want that texture, so I'd fry it. So nice sort of short, grainy rice, OK? Once the rice has been absorbed, then take it out onto a tray and just let it dry off and cool down, because you need a dry rice when you're stir-frying. Just give that whole thing a flip over. Yeah, brilliant.
Onto the stove.
Yeah, onto the stove, Sam. Straight onto the stove. Look, I mean, if you think about it, let's think about how a wok works. Yeah. All the heat is transferred up the side of the wok. So if you want it to gain heat, then you move it up the side of the wok, and it's like an even layer. So in goes the chilies, in goes the egg. And then this is my next little secret ingredient. This is dashi powder, all right? So it's a Japanese bonito powder. So it's like bonito flakes, but they've been made into a little stock powder. Bonito is a fish. okay? And it's used heavily in Japanese cooking. And what it does for me is it adds that lovely little note on the back without adding lots of soy sauce or other things that are going to give it a cloying flavour. So you just basically want, Sam, you just want about...
That much?
About half a teaspoon, all right? Sprinkled in.
Oh, it's brilliant.
So we've got ginger and garlic and the dashi powder as the seasoning. There's nothing else in there yet.
Yep.
And we're putting a little bit of char on the rice.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It's getting there.
I'm liking that. Literally a teaspoon of that mushroom soy, because it's dark mushroom soy. So just drizzle it in. Whoa! Oh, yeah, that's better. About a quarter of a cup of spring onions. And then for texture, I'm putting in about a cup and a half of bean sprouts.
And take the sauté.
Bean shoots. You can turn the heat off. I'm going to put a bit of coriander in, and that because I want to eat it in there, not just as decoration. And then I've got crispy shallots and garlic that I've made myself. This has been thinly sliced shallot that basically has been deep fried in oil and drained. So again, we've got lots of textures going in, and deep fried garlic. Plenty of that because I love it.
Yeah, yum.
Oh, yeah. And that's pretty much it. Now, I thought you'd laugh at this, Chris. I'm going to laugh at this. Just turn the gas on.
Yeah.
I've got a banana leaf. Food grade, of course. I wanted Matt to be here.
You know what the leaf is?
No.
Is it food quality? Is it food grade? Was it in your steamer?
No.
So this could be anywhere. This here, that could be on the street anywhere, couldn't it? And we're going to eat that. You're going to want us to eat food off this, yes? And you have no idea where it's come from.
What I want you to do is just wave that over there, and you'll notice that it just greens up. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So you just see that?
And why does it do that?
God knows.
Yeah, OK. That's fine.
Pop it on the plate, and then I want you to load a couple of nice, careful spoonfuls of the rice nice and high. What we're going to do is just put little pieces of the pickled ginger over the top, just as a final flurry. And then I want a nice sprinkle of garlic and ginger again. And then a few pieces of coriander, just to sort of finish it all off.
Lovely.
All right, and there we got it. That's Gary's special fried rice.
It's beautiful, man.
All right, and with the help of Sam. Right, so top tips on a stir fry. Chris made a good point. You talk about day-old rice, you've got to cook the rice in advance, and it's perfect, to be honest. If you steam it, allow it to cool on a tray, spread out in the fridge, minimum 6 hours. So yeah, cling film overnight, following day, perfect stir fry. Next one is, don't be afraid of turning the heat down on a wok. Everybody thinks that a wok has to be roaring. The reason they get panicky is they're trying to load things into the wok, you know, and try and keep up with the wok. You turn the wok down, all of a sudden, you're back in control again, so don't be afraid of that. OK, Sam, you're the first on the taste test.
No problem. The lapchong comes through packed with chilli.
I like chilli.
Yeah, but you get the bento flakes as well, which is really nice. So yeah, really, really good.
So not a bad dish with tofu, really, is it?
It's, yeah, it's excellent.
Entree?
A number of ingredients all just working together. That is packed full of flavour.
So now our VIP guest, Julia, is going to come on up and cook us something special, I hope. Julia, how are you?
I'm
are you
good.
Good?
Yes.
Good to see you.
You too.
Now tell us, what dish are you going to do for us today?
I'm going to be making pizza.
Pizza?
I am, yes. It's a hot salami pizza with buffalo mozzarella and mint.
So have you been making lots of pizzas?
I've done quite a few
out?
pizzas. The pantry is quite famous for its pizzas. The secret to their pizzas, they have a nice thin base.
It's going to take the air out of it so it doesn't prove or rise when we're cooking it.
Nice and crisp, not too doughy, and they just use beautiful, simple produce.
Just use a traditional Napoli sauce in the middle.
Just a couple of really nice things on top of the pizza.
So tell us how you make the pizza base.
Well, you start off with 15 grams of yeast, and you add your sugar and your salt.
Which is how much?
So it's 20 grams of each.
Yep.
Just pop them in. And you add your 250 grams of lukewarm water or just tepid water.
OK, that's to activate the yeast?
Yep. And you add your oil as well.
Is that olive oil?
Yes.
What's that, a tablespoon?
It's about a tablespoon of olive oil.
Brilliant.
And you just set that aside, basically, and in a little while it'll just go a bit frothy.
Yep.
And I'll get going on the sauce for the base of the pizza.
Yep.
You've got chopped tomatoes,
yep.
so it's Just about 1 tin of it.
So into a dry pan.
Yep. Basically, you just want to cook the liquid out of that, so it's
evaporate all the liquid, so
Yeah.
it becomes a bit more viscous and tight.
Yeah, and to just really intensify the flavours and get that sort of cooked tomato flavour rather than the raw tomato. And then you just add some oregano, just dried oregano.
Yep.
Good pinch of salt.
Yep.
Some pepper.
Crack of pepper.
Yep.
And just cook that down. And how long would that take?
Oh, it'll probably take about 10 minutes. So while we're cooking our sauce, we need to get the oven preheated to basically as high as it can go, and we need to put pizza stone in there to heat up.
Pizza stone. Why pizza stone?
Basically, it distributes the heat evenly, and it means that the bottom of the pizza will crisp up at the same time as the top is cooking.
And how long would you leave that in there for, preheating?
A good 30 minutes, 40 minutes, just to get it as hot as it possibly can be.
Okay, so while that's preheating, what's the next step?
The next step is to actually make the dough.
Yep.
So you've got your yeast mixture here that's is now reacting. It's gone a little bit frothy.
It's all those little bubbles on the top.
Yep. So you just pop that in a bowl, get it all out. And then you want to add your flour to your wet mixture a little bit at a time. That's 425 grams of baker's flour. Start using my hands at this point. Okay, so at this point I can turn it out.
All right, so now you're working the gluten in the dough?
Yeah, it's not sticky, but it's not really dry either. So yeah, that slight tackiness is good. So you just want it to be really smooth and really elastic, that's about right.
Yep.
You just pop it in a clean bowl.
Yep.
Just cover it up, pop it in a warm place.
Okay, so you're putting it to sleep?
Yep, just letting it prove, so it should double in size about.
Okay.
So I've got one that I prepared earlier.
Right, so it's been proving for 20 minutes, it's doubled in size, you've knocked it back, what's the next step?
Next, you just need to roll it out. For the size pizza stone, we have about 180 grams worth of dough.
Yep.
Yep. And you just want to...
Bit of a technique there when you're rolling the dough out?
Just trying to get it as round a shape as possible.
Yeah.
About how thick is that, Julia?
It's about 1/2 centimetre. Yeah, you want it to be quite thin. You can vary it if you like, depending on just how crisp you like your base.
As thin as possible, I think, is quite nice. You haven't been flipping any doughs in the air, I hope?
No. Unfortunately, I'll leave that one to Andre.
Yeah. Do you want to put it on the pizza stone, I think?
Yep.
I think we should just dust that a bit so it doesn't stick. There you go. Voila.
Put that on.
Nice. Next step?
Next up, you have to dock your base so that the base doesn't rise when it's in the oven. This way it stays nice and crisp. There you go.
Okay.
And then you put your sauce on.
Ah.
That's just down to room temperature. That's just been blended up as well, just to get a smoother consistency.
Yep.
You just need a nice even coating. And
Can you do that without the tomato base? Because I'd prefer it with just olive oil or something like that. Would that work?
you can make lots of sort of a pizza bianca style with you know, just cheese, or you could use a garlic paste, or you don't need to use tomato.
Okay, what's next?
Next up is your parsley.
Yep.
Flat leaf parsley, just chopped up nice and fine. And you put that on the base, because if you put it on top, it basically burns. And then your cheese.
So that's just simple mozzarella.
Yes.
That's been shredded.
Yep. You don't want too much cheese because it does melt a lot.
Okay.
And otherwise you end up with a really gooey base. Next up is your salami.
Yep.
And you can put as little or as much of this as you want.
I mean, you could use, other than salami, other meats, prosciutto, capocollo,
Pancetta, anything.
Yeah, pancetta.
You get your sliced tomatoes.
Right, you're going to pop that in the oven that you've preheated to as high as possible, 300 degrees there, so extremely hot. And Julia, how long will that take to cook?
It should take about 6 to 8 minutes in a domestic oven.
Now tell me, your top 3 tips to make a beautiful pizza, what would they be?
I'd say number one, take the time to do the dough properly. You know, don't buy pre-bought dough or anything. Number two, buy really good ingredients. And number three, definitely don't overload your pizza.
Smells great.
The next step is just to basically dress it.
Yep. Okay, so what have you got there? You got the buffalo mozzarella?
It's one of my favourite cheeses. Just tear off good chunks of it.
The heat left in the pizza will just help melt that cheese right down to...
Yeah. Have some nice fresh mint. Just pop it on top.
A beautiful combination with the salami that's quite peppery, that sort of acidic tomato, and that richness of the cheese will add a really great flavour to it. Delicious. So there you have it. A hot salami pizza with mozzarella, tomato and fresh mint. Right, we'll cut it up and look at that. You happy with that?
It's beautiful.
Brilliant.
Beautiful, George.
Right, Andre, do you want to come up and taste? I mean, you are our Italian representative, so tell us what you think.
Nice crunchy base. I just love this. I could have a whole heap more of buffalo mozzarella on it.
It's delicious, isn't it?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's very subtle, beautiful base. I'm very surprised how good the mint actually goes with the salami. So
Nice and fresh.
I'll take the whole thing if that's all right. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
Now we're going to look at one of the highlights of our trip, the Hong Kong Super Challenge. It was a race across Hong Kong. You started at the peak, you had to go all the way down, buy your produce, get back to the Langham Place Hotel and cook us a 3-course meal. Seared razor scallops with a celery stir fry, a really beautiful and traditional suckling pig, finishing with the apple dessert. Sam and Andre, you were victors on that day. You cooked an amazing suckling pig, Andre.
I just basically watched the girls go about cooking theirs and learnt from it. I'm sorry, Julie.
Well, today we're going to do a really simple dish of seared scallops, braised pork belly, and orange and star anise sauce. Julie, you're helping me cook the pork, so come on up. Right, Julie, so what went wrong with that suckling pig?
First mistake was that the temperature of the oven was way too high, so he started to go brown really, really quickly. When it was out of the oven, we just popped some foil over him to keep him warm. It's a big mistake.
Sweats.
Yep.
Good suckling pig should have skin actually cracks when you get it. This skin is quite leathery. It's quite hard to eat.
So today, Julie, we're cooking with pork belly. You know, it's the same sort of theory with the suckling pig. You know, you've got that layer of skin that you want to make crispy, and then you've got the fat directly underneath, and then the meat. And what needs to happen is that fat directly under the skin needs to render. You know, slowly render it out and then turn the oven up and get it nice and crisp. You did the opposite at the Super Challenge. You actually had the oven up really high. You got lots of colour on it and forgot to render that fat out, which is quite, you know, not nice on the palate. First step to this dish is to prepare the pork. So basically what we're doing is a technique called cryovacuuming. So cryovacuuming is cooking in a bag, removing all the moisture and the air. Just like when you go to a supermarket, you buy, you know, ham, it's sealed in that bag, and when you open it, the air sort of lifts up inside the bag. What that allows you to do is maintain all the juice and the flavour, rather than roasting it in a hot oven where you lose all the flavour and all that juiciness through the oven. First step is, Julie, a tablespoon of ground cinnamon on a tray. Yeah. A tablespoon of sugar. And about a half a tablespoon of salt. Yep. Give that a good mix on the tray. Now, next step is to coat your pork belly in as much of that spice mix as possible. That's great, Julie. The next step is to cryovac it, but doing it with Glade wrap, okay? We don't want to allow any moisture to get into the pork, so be as liberal as you feel. We're just putting lots of pressure on that piece of pork belly so no liquid can get into it. Now, we've got a Ziploc bag, you know, nothing special. Just pop in. Brilliant. And this will just give it that added protection that it needs. Let's just make sure that you remove any air that you can. Now, the next step is we've got a little water bath here. And this water bath is sitting at about, between 90 and 100 degrees. At that temperature, this pork belly will take about 6 hours to cook, okay? So that goes in. As soon as the pork goes into the water, it lifts up. So what you do is grab a clean cloth and just lay that in there, and that will make sure it's submerged into the water and it's cooking evenly.
And most meats you can cook that way, like non-fat or fatty meats. Does it matter?
Look, it's one of those science of cooking that you need to read, you need to understand. There's 4 things you need to take into consideration: the product, the time, the temperature, and the weight, okay? This one's been cooking for 6 hours and we've popped it in the fridge in between 2 plates. Make sure it keeps nice and flat. Excited? It feels like opening up a present, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right, the next step is just to portion the pork belly. What I want there, Julie, is 6 equal little towers. Don't go all the way through it. Just come down to just underneath the top of the skin. Fantastic. The reason why we've cut it like that is because we want to get that skin nice and crispy, and it's easier to pop that into the pan like that than 6 little bits and they're all falling over. And that goes into the pan, skin side down. And we're just going to get that started on top of the stove. Okay. So we're looking for that really nice crisp skin just before it goes in the oven, and it will finish in the oven getting really nice and crispy. I've preheated the oven to 180 degrees.
The oven, how long about for the pork?
6 to 8 minutes.
Okay.
Just for enough for it to warm through and that skin to get nice and crispy and glass texture.
Okay.
While the pork is in the oven, we'll start to prepare the sauce. Right, Julie, first step is to caramelise off our shallots. A good dollop of olive oil. 6 shallots here, go into the fry pan. Finely sliced. And we're just going to start that off. We've got some cinnamon in there, some garlic and star anise. The fattiness of the pork and the sweetness of that scallop. They're like basil and tomato. They marry really well. All right, and we just start to caramelise that off really gently. Okay, so we're starting to get that really lovely and caramelised. We'll give it some ouzo.
Cool.
You can use any aniseed, a Pernod, a vermouth. Watch those eyebrows, Julie. What we're doing is cooking all the alcohol out of that, leaving us with that aniseed flavour. Right, next step is the orange juice. Just once that flame dissipates. So that's, 250 mils of orange juice, freshly squeezed. And at this point, we start to reduce down and extract as much flavour out of that star anise, the cinnamon, and those shallots and garlic.
Just wanted to know how much you're going to reduce the sauce by.
Yeah, it needs to be extremely glazy. We want it to hold on the plate. And what we're going to do is finish it with a little bit of olive oil so it's got that nice shine to it.
Okay.
Right, let's have a look at the sauce and see if we're at the right consistency. What do you think, Julie?
It's beautiful.
Okay, so if you can just get all of that into there really gently. Now, pick out any of that star anise and cinnamon and give that a good push through. And squeeze as much of that juice out as possible. Nothing goes to waste. This is going to be used on the dish as well, the shallots. Lovely. Right, so Julie, you've passed the sauce. That's liquid gold, that. If you can shred that coriander and mint up, so last minute, this goes in. We've got a little bit of olive oil, of course. We're going to prepare the other elements to the scallop and pork dish. So Julie's shredded, 5 leaves of mint and 5 sprigs of coriander. And if you could add that to this sort of braised shallots and garlic. A little pinch of sea salt will be lovely. Give that a good stir. Make sure you're happy with it, Julie. Mm-hmm. Next step, we're going to prepare the scallops. So what we're doing now is my seared scallops with braised pork belly and an orange and star anise sauce. Now, Julie, what happened with your scallops?
I didn't time it very well, and so I put it aside before serving, and I accidentally put it into a warm pan instead of into a cold pan, so it continued to cook.
But the scallops, I'd suck on them and then I'd spit them out. These are way overcooked. It's a shame. Now, what we have here is some beautiful spring-based scallops. They've been removed out of the shell, and what we've done is basically taken the scallop and just literally cut it in half. Now, what we want to do is create a little rose shape out of the scallop. We've marked a pen to circle, okay? So we've got a guide, and we've marked it on the other side, so you're not going to get the flavour of the texture, yeah? And it's just standard greaseproof paper. Now, it's really, really important that you dry the scallops out. There's no moisture at all, or what's going to happen is the scallops aren't going to stick together, okay? If they're wet, they'll just fall apart. All right, Julie, I'm going to get you to do the rest. You get the rhythm?
Yep.
The dry side stays up. And not only does it help with the presentation by fanning them out like that, but it also helps to stick them together evenly, and it will cook evenly as well. How's that, Julie?
Good.
Okay, you've done not a bad job. Right, so now we're left with that little hole in the centre, and we're just going to cover that hole up. And there we have it. We've got a beautiful little rows of scallops, so to speak. Our scallops actually need to sit on something. They need a little base of some sort. So what we've got here is some puff pastry that we've just cut with a cutter. We've docked, okay, put on silicone paper. We've popped another sheet of silicone paper on top, a tray on top of that, and baked it in the oven for 8 to 12 minutes at 160 degrees, just until they become nice and golden brown. Pop that down. So we're going to pop the caramelised shallots on top of the puff pastry, and that will create the perfect bed for the seared scallops. Right, our pork belly's been in the oven for 8 minutes. Now have a look at that. Julie, come and have a look at this. That beautiful golden, crispy colour,
Yep.
Delicious. Now, the next step is to sear our scallops, and this is probably the difficult part, okay? Now, you really need to concentrate when you do this, and you need to be really quick. So we've got a pan that's hot. Now, just a little bit of oil, not too much. This is our presentation side down, all right? A little bit of salt at the last minute, because we don't want to remove any moisture from the scallop. And then, pray to God, it all works. Flip side in.
So for how long?
30 seconds, Jules. We just gently peel off that greaseproof paper, and we don't need that anymore. So that just helped us get them in the pan. We don't want these to come apart. If it comes apart, it defeats the purpose of doing it like this. Right, at this point here, we grab our puff pastry disc with our onions, and we just gently place them on top. All right, and now I need to get it out of the pan. That's the tricky bit, Jules. Do you want to do it?
Oh, I might watch you do it.
You sure? I'm happy to pass the job on. What I like to do is wipe the pan clean of oil. I need some real praying happening here, because this is going to be fun. Right. There you go. Wow. All right. Okay. There you have it. There our scallop, our rows of scallops, so to speak. Right, Jules, now we're ready to plate up. Okay, so first step is our little rows of scallops go down, and then we've got our pieces of pork belly. You know I hate even numbers, Jules, so there's one piece left for you.
Beauty.
Okay. And then just to finish our sauce, that is like a glaze, it's just beautiful and rich. And maybe a little bit for you, Jules. How about that?
Yum.
And then just to finish, parsley cress. And just elevate the dish. And there you have it, seared scallops, braised pork belly, and an orange and star anise sauce.
Nice one.
Jules, that's yours, baby.
Ripper.
A whole lot, a whole lot. What are you doing? How's that?
It's so soft. It just melts in your mouth. It's so tender. The sauce is really rich and beautiful, like a real orangey sort of a glaze.
I don't know if you can sort of notice, there's not many flavours on this plate, you know. It's a play on textures with, 4 different flavours. You don't need to overload things with lots of different flavours.
No, it's really lovely. Lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. You did a great job, sweetheart. Thank you. Chris, would you like to come up and taste?
Love to. I wish I could swear, it's so good. The combination of the shallots and the herbs you put through just really lift those scallops.
Yeah, they do.
It's an amazing combination, yeah. That sauce is gorgeous.
It's lovely, so simple, so easy.
Yeah.
Orange juice, fresh orange juice. Right, top tips. When cooking the pork in glad wrap or sous vide style, make sure that the bath for the pork is approximately between 90 and 100 degrees. Also, it's really important that your scallops are dry. Leave them between absorbent paper so that it removes as much moisture as possible, or else the scallops won't stick. My final tip, when you pop those scallops in the pan, you need to be on the ball. You need to be over them, ready to go to get them out of the pan, or else you're going to overcook them.
So next up, we're going to recap your high tea challenge, which you did at the Langham Hotel. And Sam and Chris, you competed against Julia, who was the wild card. Back for that challenge, you were like, didn't expect to see her, did you?
No.
No, not at all.
We had to cook 3 pastries and put on a high tea service for Sarah and Matt.
Julia, you nailed the millefeuille. You've won today's
Well done, darling. And Julia smashed us.
Gary, so what are you cooking today?
Well, I'm going to do scones, and I'm going to do a date and lemon scone. So the reason I picked scones is because they're just a classic that everybody warms to, and you have to have a good recipe. So, Chris, you're going to come up as soon as you failed dismally in the challenge against Julia.
Thanks.
And you're going to help. This is a cracker of a recipe. So, 150 ml of milk, 150 ml of cream, 1 egg in there, whisked. And I'm going to put 3 cups of flour, and I'm not going to bother sifting it. Okay, so just crack an egg in there.
I need to put the shell somewhere.
Yeah, I'll just put the shell in there. I love the way you're so tidy, Chris. I love it. So whisk the egg in. And as long as you get this 150, 3 cups of flour, 1 egg, which is pretty easy to remember, you're going to be good. Lucas?
It's self-raising flour, though, isn't it? Yeah.
Self-raising flour. If you didn't use self-raising flour, baking powder, all right? Probably about 1.5 teaspoons to 3 cups if you use plain flour. And we're going to put in about 2 tablespoons full of sugar. So if you pop that into the dry ingredients, there's always a reason for a little bit of sweetness. Dates, chopped, 1 cup in. And zest 1 lemon. And then we have date and lemon scones.
Okay.
Come on, Chris. Pick the pace up. So 3 cups of flour, 2 tablespoons of sugar, cup of chopped dates, zest of 1 lemon. And don't forget, you got some flexibility, so you can make them savoury. You could put dill, you could put feta, you could put olives, you could put anything you want in, and they'd make great little canopies. Sam, you got a question?
Yeah, you talked about variations with savoury scones.
Yeah.
What are some other things you could put in a sweet scone?
What other things?
Yeah.
Well, start thinking about sweet things.
Yeah.
Just think of anything. You put chocolate. To be honest, you could treat it like a muffin. You can put fruit in it, you put dried fruit in it, semi-dried fruit, you know. So all we've got to do is put in the wet ingredients, which is the 150 milk, 150 cream, and the 1 egg.
Just pour it in and mix it up.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to just give it a good old mix. All right, so it's pretty much an all-in-one recipe. That's what makes it nice and easy. Bring it together in the bowl, and then we're going to tip it out onto the bench with a little bit of flour. So tip that baby out. And what you're going to do is just give it a quick knead, but essentially you're just going to bring it up into a nice sort of smooth, coherent dough and forming it into a big patty that you can cut scones from. Yeah.
How much do we work it?
Not much, just so it's a nice, coherent sort of chunk, which looks pretty good. Does it feel nice?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then basically flatten it out, bring it round, flatten it out, bring it round, so you get about a, 2-inch Yeah, bit flatter. So really, I mean, all you're doing is just saying how big do I want my scones to be.
Your 2 inches are different to my 2 inches.
Yeah, I know. Right, crack those out. Right, so what I do is then I tip them out this way, so they've got that little flat side up.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So what's important is not to overwork the dough here. You want a nice, soft, sort of cohesive dough. And if you overwork it, you'll get a different texture. You'll sort of have a more chewy textured scone. I prefer a crumbly scone. So basically just a little bit of milk and a little bit of sugar on the top gives you a little bit of a glaze. And these get baked at 200 for about 10 to 15 minutes until they're golden, all right? So Chris, pop them in the oven, 15 minutes, and then we'll be enjoying a pot of tea.
Lovely.
And some scones. So there you have it, the world's easiest scones. Top tip for scones, let's face it, recipe. Recipe is king for pastry. If you don't follow that recipe, it's not going to work. But number 2, just make sure that you don't overwork the dough. You're going to end up with this really sort of bready scone. And also bake until golden brown.
Gary, I've got the tea.
Oh, beautiful. Put it down here. Actually,
are the scones ready?
Yeah, just grab them out of the oven.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Beautiful.
Oh, you're a good man, aren't you?
They look delicious.
So you can tell they're cooked because you tap them on the bottom. They've got little hollow bottoms and they're nice and light. Bit of jam and a bit of cream on each one.
Yep.
And I suppose we should ask Chris if he wants to taste one first. Chris, come on, let's try. Let's see what you think of your scones. I've got to get in there too. I can't let you two...
Wow.
It's beautiful and crisp on the outside. I love that texture.
I think there's so much soul in something as simple as a scone, you know, and there's so many chefs out there that can't make one.
Thank you.
Cheers, Chris. Sam, come on. You were our other high tea contestant.
Reminds me of when I used to go over to my grandma's house and eat scones with her. It's beautiful.
So that's masterclass for another week. So I think we should pile all this stuff over onto the table and have our usual dinner and maybe a glass of wine. Hong Kong was a great experience. It was fabulous. We enjoyed it immensely. Any inspiration you can get might give you the edge.
Congratulations. It's a great achievement that all of you made it to Hong Kong. That was a week in your life that you'll never forget. Well done.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Guys. Cheers, guys. Guys, good luck to all. Cheers. Cheers, Chris.
Next time on MasterChef Australia.
The countdown to the finals has well and truly begun.
Some mystery ingredients get our 4 remaining chefs thinking outside of the box.
Let's face it, whoever wins this challenge is going to be a genius.
Plus, there's romance in the air as our chefs fall in love with food all over again.
I can't think of a less romantic environment than the MasterChef kitchen, to be perfectly honest.
It could be a really tricky challenge.
Question is, have they bitten off more than they can chew? 3 courses each? Have they got time?
If you can't push yourself at this stage, well, it's time to go home, I suppose.
That's a disaster, isn't it?
Why is this happening to me?